friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Video 510. Tighten that neighborhood. My brothers and sisters, it is that time to get into another one of these true crime, horror, dark, deep, and mysterious what the is going on type of videos. And today, it is Friday. So y'all know who we're about to go back to. Adrian from Coffeehouse Crime. Back to the Coffee Man, y'all. And I want to give a shout out to the Coffee Man real quick. Give him a shout out because he is at 1.99 million subscribers, y'all. And by the time y'all see this video, he probably gonna already been to hit that 2 million subscriber milestone, man. So just shout out to the Coffee Man for that. And hey, very soon, Mr. Coffee Man, you gonna get the 3 million, you gonna get the 4, you gonna get the 5, you gonna get the 6, you gonna get the 7, and on and on and on, because your freaking content is excelente. But I digress. The title of the video is When a Victim Catches a Secret Killer, the case of Mindy Morgenstern. Now it says catches a secret killer. So I'm thinking that even the damn police ain't know that this person was a freaking murderer, and this particular victim found out first. You know what I'm saying, man? They got some type of evidence that led them to know that this is a murderer. But I don't know for real, y'all, but we're about to see. But before we see, my brothers and sisters, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you may need. Get what you need, please. We back to Adrian from Coffeehouse Crime. Y'all got what y'all need, y'all ready to go. Then let's go.
When 22-year-old student Mindy Morgenstern suddenly stopped responding to messages and phone calls, her friends immediately became concerned. Fast forward several hours, and they came across one of the most horrific scenes they could have ever imagined. And Mindy, she had been murdered. The crime scene left behind depicted a very gruesome story, with plenty of small clues left in its wake. And once detectives set their sights on the killer, they were surprised to see just how deep his violent history ran. So, who is Mindy Morgenstern? Who was her killer? And how on earth was he able to obtain a job as a prison guard? Lies, corruption, and a story that begins and ends with DNA evidence. Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and today we're looking at the terrible story of Mindy Morgenstern. By the way, I post stories like this up to 2 times a week here, so if that does sound like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. It really does help me out. Let's dive straight into this one today, folks. Please grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate. This is the case of Mindy Morgenstern.
Get whatever you may need. And one thing I just gotta excuse me, y'all. One thing I just gotta point out, as far as like a feeling that I got even going into this story, I got a feeling that it's gonna be so like clear, like crystal clear, that this guy's a murderer before the police even figure it out. You know what I'm saying? Like all the writing gonna be on the wall, but for some crazy reason, they not gonna send this man to prison. That's just, I already got that feeling in my soul. But let's go.
Welcome back, folks. Today, we're in Valley City, North Dakota. Located in Barnes County, Valley City was established in the year 1874, after a railroad station had been constructed to help move goods through the county. Spanning only 4 square miles in size and with a relatively small population that has never exceeded 7,000 people, Valley City is a very quiet town with almost nothing to shout about. Maybe it's the engineer in me, but the High Line Railroad Bridge nearby is a relic of old American engineering, requiring 30 steel towers to be raised from the nearby terrain. Otherwise, the only other notable landmark is the Vault Coffee Shop, an unmanned self-serve coffee shop, bakery and bookstore. However, if you ask me, that sounds pretty soulless. I mean, where is that super annoying barista telling you dark stories going to be? Now, although this place is, for the most part, entirely silent, sadly, in the late summer of 2006, Valley City was about to be thrust into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. It was on—
And we've been watching videos lately, y'all, of a lot of like, I ain't gonna say unpopular, but not the most populous of cities, little towns and little rural areas that have the most craziest crimes going on. And that just go back to what I always say, man, no matter where you at, it can get evil. You know what I'm saying? It can get dangerous.
On September the 13th that 2 friends decided to check in on their friend. Tony Bauman and Danielle Holmstrom hadn't heard back from Mindy Morgenstern for quite some time, which, to her standards, was highly unusual. Concerned for her well-being, and knowing that she had struggled with illness at various points throughout her life, they decided to travel to her apartment to see what was wrong. You see, Mindy suffered from multiple sclerosis, and so she needed good friends like this to look out for her. Upon arriving, they knocked on the front door, but both friends were greeted with silence. After trying the door handle, they realized it wasn't locked. And so, with that in mind, the 2 friends opened the door and stepped inside. And sadly, a terrible scene awaited them. About 2 steps in, they noticed something on the ground right before their feet. The lifeless body of Mindy lay sprawled on the floor, and something appeared to be around her neck. It became immediately apparent that someone had taken her life. The grim news of Mindy's death spread quickly around town, and soon enough, the area was swarming with officers and crime forensic detectives, as they began to secure the scene and investigate what precisely happened to this poor young woman. As detectives entered the property, they could smell a distinct and overwhelming smell of pine sol, a typical cleaning solution typically used in many American homes. So, one of the first questions to enter their mind was, did her killer try to clean up the evidence? A special agent involved in the case would later recall that a belt was found to be wrapped around her neck, and furthermore, a knife had been used so violently that the blade had broken off the handle in her throat. After identifying the victim as 22-year-old Mindy Morgenstern, officers were then faced with the heartbreaking task of informing the family. They then traveled to New Salem, where they broke the news to Mindy's oldest sister. She took the news as anyone would expect. Heartbreak, pain, confusion, and anger. These are just several emotions felt by Mindy's family as they now tried to grapple with this terrible cocktail of feelings. As with most homicide investigations, the world now owed answers to the Morgenstern family. Mindy was dead, but nobody knew who was responsible or why. To be attacked or even murdered in your own home is such a common fear these days. Thankfully, most of us will never have to endure such a thing. But for Mindy, she unfortunately was the unlucky one. Now, it is worth noting that with Mindy's apartment being on the 2nd floor, she was far less likely to be burgled than her ground floor neighbors. So, can we rule out that possibility at this stage? Looking at the crime scene, Mindy's apartment was in a typical low-rise apartment complex, with stairs located in the main hallway leading up to her flat. Her front door led to a rather thin hallway, half covered with her own shoes and trainers amongst thick grey carpet. The only bedroom of the apartment was situated to the right of this hallway, with her lounge area straight ahead and to the left. Her TV, medication, phone, and other items were all left behind at the crime scene, indicating that whoever had killed her was not here for the money. Mindy's
Yeah, like this one right here, this is one of those cases where all the evidence at the crime scene, it leads you to believe that whoever did this, they just wanted to kill her. That was their sole purpose. You know what I'm saying, man? And that they more than likely knew her. Like they had some type of relationship with her. This just wasn't no random act. You know what I'm saying? But another thing that just kind of get on my nerves, and I really don't know why, but I just want to point it out, is the fact that whoever did this, they left the freaking door unlocked. You know what I'm saying? Well, they just left the door unlocked where anybody could just go in there and see Mindy on the floor dead. Like they ain't care who seen it. You know, I don't know. For some reason, that kind of get on my nerves, just the fact that they did that. But yeah, this is most definitely pointing towards somebody who had a relationship with her and really wanted her dead. Let's go.
Body was found on the floor at the fork of these 3 rooms, between her bedroom, hallway, and open-plan living area. It is suggested that perhaps she was dragged in from the hallway, and this meant that her body was clearly visible as you walked into the property. And with her purse, keys, and mobile phone all left behind, it couldn't possibly have been for the money. So, what was the motive, and why had she been targeted? Well, before we take a look into the whys of this story, let's first look at who precisely Mindy was. Born on April the 29th, 1984 in Bogota, Colombia, Mindy grew up alongside her older brother and sister. Their time in Colombia was unfortunately short-lived, and Mindy and her siblings soon found themselves in hardship. As a result, she was eventually adopted by Larry and Eunice Morgenstern. Now, Larry and Eunice were a couple who lived with their biological daughter near New Salem, North Dakota. And it is worth mentioning here that this was only 4 miles from the apartment she was found in. Described by her friends as caring, outgoing, and compassionate, Mindy's family spoke of how she was always eager to help out around the farmhouse where they lived. She preferred to live in the real world, and loved nothing more than assisting with all of the chores and tasks around the property. After graduating from the New Salem High School in the local area, she studied at Valley City State University only a few miles away, where she majored in physical education. By the year 2006, she had entered her final year and was considering what to do with her future. With a keen interest in sports, most particularly basketball, she had plans to remain in physical education or something similar. Mindy was well known in the local basketball courts, and her childhood hero was Michael Jordan. Now, as mentioned before, sadly, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis while at university, which therefore limited her abilities in any of these events. But Mindy did not let this condition stop her. She remained involved by coaching her local basketball team and working as a lifeguard at the nearby swimming pool. Her diagnosis was actually part of the reason why she was living off campus and in her own apartment on 515 8th Street Northeast. This, of course, being a way to manage her condition and the risks associated with getting ill. At the time of her death, she was taking part in a trial where she was taking a drug similar to chemo, one that made her especially vulnerable to any ordinary illness that she might pick up from others. And so, as a result, she decided to reduce that likelihood of catching a cold by living alone. In addition to her active social life and her education, Mindy was also religious, and participated in services and choirs and playing multiple musical instruments. She was an incredible person, was active in her community, and looked out for others. And tragically, due to no fault of her own, now she had been murdered.
Man, I just gotta go and say it right now, y'all. Rest in peace to Mindy, man. She seemed like she was having a great life, you know, a life that we all would be satisfied and happy with living. But it's just like, evil always just try to find a way to just come towards you in some type of capacity, man. And I think the way that this finna happen to her is about to be real tragic. Just the way that this man came into her life and everything good that she had going on. Let's go.
As the terrible news began to spread, her family and friends struggled to come to terms with this tragedy that had now obliterated them. Meanwhile, and in the background, detectives were hard at work at trying to piece together a timeline that could hopefully try to find her killer. In the apartment where her body was found, detectives realized that, actually, nothing had been stolen whatsoever, including her purse, which was found next to her. Now, after speaking to her friends and family, it was noted that Mindy was actually with her boyfriend the night prior before she returned home just after midnight. She then spoke to him over the phone the following morning, telling him that she was meeting a friend at the library, so her boyfriend was no longer a suspect. Computer systems show that Mindy had been at the university library in the morning and had logged out just before 12:30 p.m. She then headed back to her apartment, as noticed by several witnesses and seen by multiple surveillance cameras. However, that is when testimonies and evidence of her alive began to dry up. In fact, she had stopped responding to phone calls and text messages at around 12:50 p.m, and by 9 p.m. that evening, her friends had entered through the front door to find her lifeless body. This evidence gave the authorities a relatively clear time frame. Mindy's death occurred within an 8-hour window, most likely happening shortly before 12:50 in the afternoon. It is noted that this is roughly the time that she returned home, and now all they had to do was identify her killer. But this would prove to be hard for officers to figure out. Mindy was well loved by all who knew her, and everyone they spoke to seemed to have a credible alibi at the time. As investigations began, detectives would reveal that a belt had been used to strangle her. In addition to this, her throat had been cut so viciously that a portion of the blade had actually broken off inside of her. Forensic analysis would also identify that DNA had been found underneath her fingernails, which in this story would be substantially significant evidence. However, who this belonged to was, at this point in time, anyone's guess. Saying that blind wonder would not last for very long, and in fact, a suspect was identified and then arrested only 1 week later. That being Mindy's very own neighbour named Mo Morris Gibbs. Now, despite detective suspicions, Mo initially seemed to have an alibi. Additionally, he was also working as a correctional officer at the Barnes County Prison nearby. The critical thing to note here is that a candidate who will work at a prison typically requires a comprehensive background check before being employed in any position of authority like this. And so, as you will soon find out, the fact that Mo was even employed here was a massive surprise to detectives. Furthermore, the alibi that he initially provided to the authorities would not hold up for very long. You see, Mo claimed that he wasn't even anywhere near the apartment on the day that Mindy was murdered, and that, furthermore, he and his pregnant wife were actually in the process of moving homes. The truth is that, although some of these elements of his alibi are in fact true, it could not be proven for the entire time frame. And so, officers decided to dig a little deeper. Investigators looked into Mo's records a little further, and realized that, although he had been honest about his occupation and his location, he had actually concealed various elements to make himself appear more innocent. And so, all of a sudden, Mo found himself deep in the spotlight.
And the thing I'm wondering right now, y'all, the main thing I'm wondering right now is why did he do it? Because there was his next door neighbor, and if Coffee Man would have said that he sexually assaulted her, raped her, you know what I'm saying? If he would have said that that Mo did that to her, then that would give me some type of motive. Like, I'm looking for a motive. He just killed his freaking neighbor. Like I said, y'all, it just seemed like evil just always gonna try to crawl its way in your life. You know what I'm saying? As long as we on earth, we will never be able to just 100% get away from evil. We just gotta keep running away as fast as we can, man, and just try to keep leaving it in the distance. But it's gonna always try to creep back up in there, up in our lives, man. Like, why did he do this? Let's find out. Because like I said, unless I'm wrong, y'all, I don't remember Coffee Man saying anything about her being sexually assaulted before she died. I don't know. Let's go.
So, at least initially, Mo seemed to pass their test without any notice whatsoever. However, as time went by, holes started to appear in his story and his personality. To begin with, his name was not actually Mo Morris Gibbs. In fact, he had changed it several years prior from Glenn Dale Morgan Jr. As it turns out, Mo, or Glenn, actually used to be an amateur boxer before then joining the Navy for a short while. However, his time in service was short-lived. And that's because Mo ended up being arrested, charged, and convicted of premeditated attempted murder, before then spending 5 years in jail of what was supposed to be a 10-year sentence. And unfortunately, you can already see where this story is going. You have to love those reduced sentences. Glenn's name change, which was dated back to the year 2005, was likely in an effort to try and distance himself from this murder charge, And actually, he seemed to do that pretty well, because not even his wife knew about it. And that was not the only surprise that detectives found once they started digging into Mo's profile. As you may expect, they would cover all bases by also looking at his love life. And it turns out that this man had many dark secrets. They learned that Mo had actually been married before to a woman named Tasha in 1991, when at the time, they were both at the tender age of 18. Now, despite his conviction in 1993, she did end up staying with him, but only for a short while. In fact, after having a child with him, she divorced him in 1997, shortly before his release. Mo then married another woman named Melissa in the year 2002, only to divorce her 3 years later in 2005. The interesting thing here is that, while the two were still married, records show that 2 additional women made claims for child support against Mo, both for children who were born in 2003. So, it looks like our married man with dual identities also had multiple women on the go. Overall,
boy, Mo was a freaking Rolling Stone out here as far as having babies and just getting married left and right. Like, Mo was just out here in these streets as far as like in these trying to get in these women's sheets. You know what I'm saying, man? Oh my God, bro. It's so freaking crazy. Can you imagine marrying someone and thinking that they this person and then come to find out they somebody completely different, and not only that, they are a freaking murderer. This ain't even their damn name. You don't know nothing about their past murder charge or nothing. And you done married this person, fell in love, having kids, all that. Think your life is in order. Then one day you find out that shit about your partner, your significant other. Can you imagine it?
The authorities discovered that there were at least 5 women who had claimed child support against Mo over the years before he had even moved to North Dakota. And of course, that is when he would meet Christina Judd. Christina, who was his current partner at the time, claimed that although he had admitted to having a criminal background, he had not actually been honest to her about the true extent of his crimes. Back to the authorities, Mo claimed that on the day that Mindy was murdered, he was working until 7 AM at the Barnes County Correctional Center before dropping Christina off at work between 12:30 and 12:40. And after that, he apparently returned back home to start packing. Unfortunately for him though, this placed him in the exact location as Mindy and in the same time frame when she had suddenly turned silent. And of course, this information made detectives very curious. An autopsy report concluded that the time of her death was likely between the hours of 12:30 and 1:30 PM, further confirming the overlap between Mo and Mindy. And then came the real hook and sinker. The autopsy would also confirm that the DNA under her fingernails did in fact positively match Mo. Not only
Well, that's it. He done. Lock him up and throw away the key. That's the last piece of evidence we needed right there. Your DNA under her fingernails. You're done, buddy.
would this be a solid indication that he was in fact responsible for her death, but he also had the wounds to go with it. And that's because, during his interview, detectives realized that he had freshly made cuts on his hands. However, that was not the end of it for Mo. Now that he'd been placed under a more scrutinous lens by detectives, they realized that his DNA actually matched another case not too far away. This one dated back to the year 2004 in a town named Fargo, and, no surprise, it involved sexual assault. And although the assailant had never been found, it looked like that was all about to change. By the way, it should be noted that Mo actually voluntarily gave his DNA to officers. So, I don't know what he was expecting. Between his DNA, his close relation to the crime scene, the injuries observed on his hands, and now his previous convictions, detectives believed that they finally had their guy. And furthermore, the evidence to prove it. As a result, he was finally arrested on September the 21st, 2006, on charges of first-degree murder, and without bond. But if you thought that Mo would make it easy for Mindy's family, sadly, think again. Because 5 days later, he would plead not guilty, meaning that Mo had to go to trial. But thankfully, the prosecution were both ready and waiting for his response, and that very same day, additional charges were laid against him. These ones related to his workplace. Mo was hit with a series of very damning allegations. On that day, a total of 5 female inmates at Barnes County Jail came forward to accuse Mo of sexually assaulting them. leading to an additional 6 felony charges for these incidents with women who were under his care at the time. Due to
It's like more and more and more keep coming out of Mo closet. Like Mo got so many freaking skeletons in his closet that I'm surprised he able to close the goddamn door. For real, for a long time, y'all, he was getting away with a lot, man, a freaking lot. And I'm just gonna make the reference like this. This dude was a freaking R. Kelly. R. Kelly wasn't no goddamn murderer, but he had a lot of he was Diddy. You know what I'm saying, man? Like the dude had a lot of skeletons in the closet, and one day everything that's done in the dark will come to freaking light. And another thing about this that I want to try to correct myself on real quick, because I was saying, especially after finding out about all these sexual assault cases that he got against him, you know, when I was saying, y'all, I was saying that she wasn't sexually assaulted, so that couldn't have been the reason that so why did he really freaking murder her? Because he didn't rob her, he didn't steal nothing. Like, why did he just attack this lady? The thing that I wasn't thinking about, and now I'm thinking about it, is he probably was trying to freaking sexually assault her, but she fought him off so hard to the point where he was never able to do that, so then he just resorted to killing her. I had to think about that one, y'all, and I know y'all probably thinking the same, but I got it. Let's go.
To the intense public scrutiny surrounding this case, the trial's venue was relocated to Minnow, with proceedings scheduled to commence mid-2007. The initial trial concluded in July of that year, resulting in a hung jury that could not reach a verdict after deliberating for 23 hours. The prosecution portrayed Mo as a sexual predator and suggested that he may have made advancements to Mindy within her apartment. Allegedly, when she resisted and rebuffed him, he then resorted to taking her life to save the skin off his back. In contrast, his defense team countered this by questioning the validity of the DNA evidence, and emphasized that fingerprints found at the crime scene did not actually match Mo Gibbs. Despite this, a retrial took place in October of that very same year, finally resulting in a guilty verdict and a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Maintaining his innocence until the end, Mo gave his own statement to Mindy's family, saying, "My heart and prayers go out to the Morgenstern family. This is a terrible crime that should never have happened, and I apologize that it did." During court proceedings, Mindy's mother addressed Mo to express her forgiveness, but also emphasized that she would never forget the harm that he inflicted on her daughter. She then extended her own sympathy to Mo's family and all of his children. Now, despite claiming that he was not guilty with Mindy, Mo did admit guilt to the cold case in Fargo, and furthermore, he also confessed on all counts of sexual assault from incidents at his workplace. The prosecution further suggested that Mo's actions were indicative of a struggle with sexual addiction, and it's also worth mentioning that one of the assaults against the inmates occurred on the same day that Mindy was murdered. As a result, Mo was found guilty and convicted of sexually assaulting 5 inmates at the prison, with all of these assaults occurring between May 2006 and September 2006. In addition to this, he was also found guilty of the cold case in Fargo, resulting in sentences of 12 and 15 years respectively. These sentences were to be served concurrently with his existing life sentence, which, as it turns out, was without the possibility of parole. Surprisingly, many who knew Mo were actually shocked at his crimes. They remembered him as a dedicated, disciplined athlete who cared for his children. As of the time this video is being published, Mo Gibbs remains incarcerated at the maximum security North Dakota State Penitentiary, which is located in Bismarck. Currently, he is 51 years old. Despite enduring immense heartache, Mindy's adoptive parents have found some capacity for forgiveness. Eunice articulated a perspective by saying, "Forgiveness is acknowledging the horrendous act he committed, while surrendering the hatred and bitterness to God, as it's beyond our own capacity." She eventually channeled her grief into writing, which would eventually evolve into her publishing her own book named Mindy in 2019. And while nothing can be done to bring Mindy back, her family and friends have found some solace in knowing that Mo is no longer able to harm anyone else. Mindy Morgenstern was laid to rest at the Graceland Cemetery in New Salem, not far from the home where her adoptive family and siblings raised her. And while there is no doubt that the way she lost her life was terrible and unnecessary, her family and friends are determined to remember her for who she was in life. for the happiness and the enthusiasm that she had, regardless of the situation. Her strong faith, shared with her parents, shone through in her thoughts of one day possibly becoming a missionary, and in the kindness that she used and treated everyone with around her. She is further remembered for her passion in both sports and music, and for the way that she never let any challenge or obstacle in her path slow her down. Despite the tragic circumstances of her death, her family genuinely seemed to have found forgiveness in their hearts. In her honor, a heart-shaped memorial in her name is erected on the corner of 9th Street Northeast and 5th Street Avenue Northeast. To this day, it stands in her memory as a reflection of the good that she provided, rather than the tragic circumstances of her death. Now, thankfully, Mo will never see the light of day again. However, he has taken several victims with him, not just in murder, but also in sexual assault. And how he was able to obtain a job at a prison just simply by changing his name honestly baffles me. It sounds like that background check is not robust enough at all. Anyway folks, I think that pretty much covers this case today. So on that note, what do you think about this one? As always, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Just a quick notice that over the next few weeks, I'll be trying my hand at a few different types of stories, so keep an eye on that. And as always, I really appreciate you watching. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out my Patreon here, or alternatively, check out my social media here. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the end of the video today, folks. Thank you again so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you again very soon for another one. Until that moment arrives though, remember to look after yourself, look after each other, and of course, stay safe. Thank you. And goodbye.
The coffee man said he got some new stuff in the lab that he trying to cook up for us, y'all. So I'm excited for that, man. But as far as this story, y'all, this story right here got me feeling like just wanting to scream out, blurt out that this shit is not fair. Like, life is not fair. And what I mean by this is, even though he got the life in prison without parole and all that, you know what I'm saying? Yes, he do got that. And I'm glad that he got that. But it's still like, he's still alive. Like, Mindy has been gone since what? I think she died in 2006. She been dead for almost 18 years. She ain't been able to be on this earth for these past 18 years while his ass rotting in prison. I don't even want him to rot in prison. I just want him to be rotted out and be gone. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm such an advocate of the death penalty, especially in cases where you know for a fact. He even admitted to it. If knowing, he admitted to himself of killing her, all the sexual assaults and stuff. Now, I'm not going to say that nobody deserved a death penalty for sexual assault, but I'm just saying, man, it just feels so freaking unfair, man, that she is no longer here. But even though he in prison, he's still breathing. Like, that shit just kind of get on my nerves, y'all. It just make me want to just rage and just scream like, you know what I'm saying? This shit ain't right. But like I was saying, man, evil just always gonna try to creep into your life. And it's just crazy that your freaking neighbor could turn out to be a murderer, and one day he or she can murder you. And I gotta say one more time too, because I didn't understand it, because the coffee man ain't really bring up his sexual assault stuff till later on in the video. At first I'm wondering, like, why in the freak did he even do this? But he was a sexual crazed mother. And men, not say all men, but there are some men out here that to get the you know what, they would dang near do anything, man. Like, seriously, and he most definitely was one of them. But I digress, my brothers and sisters. I'm gonna let y'all go now. There's some other stuff that I could say about this one, but I feel like we have been here long enough. I appreciate y'all coming on back. As always, y'all just please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that if you ain't did that yet. And come on back tomorrow for another The Wi-Fi Saturday. But until then, my friends, I also need y'all to remember this. Love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.